I adjusted my radio as I started my evening patrol through Aroostook County, the familiar weight of the handset a comfort in my palm. 7:30 on a Tuesday night in October, and the temperature was already dropping fast. I could see my breath when I'd walked out to the cruiser. I reached down and checked my ankle holster, feeling the cold metal of the iron knife pressed against my boot through the leather. Most cops don't carry backup blades. Hell, most cops would laugh if they saw mine. But most cops haven't worked this county for 15 years. The radio crackled to life. Unit 7, this is dispatch. We've got a routine traffic stop on Route 9, mile marker 42. Janet Morrison's voice, steady as always, professional. Copy that, dispatch. Unit 7 responding. I wasn't responding, though. I had other routes to check tonight, and Janet knew it. She was just keeping the chatter normal for anyone else listening. Standard procedure around here. I came up on the turnoff to Route 11 and kept driving straight. Didn't even slow down. 3 years ago, I'd made the mistake of stopping for what looked like a stranded motorist on that stretch. Woman in a white dress, waving her arms by a broken-down sedan. Except, when I got out of the cruiser, there was no sedan. No woman. Just tire tracks that led straight into the Penobscot River. I learned that night that some calls you don't answer. The old Miller farm came up on my right. Nothing but overgrown fields and a collapsed barn that had been falling down since I was a kid. I was doing maybe 45 when I spotted movement at the tree line. Deer. Big buck. Probably 8 points, standing perfectly still about 30 yards off the road. Nothing unusual about that. We got deer everywhere up here. Then I saw its eyes. Blue-green glow, bright as headlights. Not the normal reflection you get from a flashlight or high beams. This was something else. Something that came from inside. I pressed harder on the accelerator. The deer's head turned as my cruiser passed, tracking my movement with those burning eyes. Smooth as a security camera. Too smooth. Too deliberate. Deer don't move like that. They're jumpy. Nervous. This one watched me like it was taking notes. Danny Rodriguez had stopped for a deer like that 5 years back. Found his cruiser the next morning. Driver's door open. Engine still running. Radio tuned to static. Never found Danny. I was doing 60 now. Maybe 65. The speedometer needle bounced as I hit a pothole, but I didn't let up. In my rearview mirror, I could still see those eyes glowing in the darkness, fixed on my taillights until the road curved and I lost sight of them. My radio buzzed with an incoming call. The display lit up, 207-666-3847. I stared at the numbers, my foot easing off the gas pedal. 666 prefix. We'd been getting calls from that exchange for 2 months now. Always at night. Always when officers were alone on patrol. Nobody ever answered them. Department policy. The radio kept buzzing. I grabbed the radio before it could buzz again. Unit 12 to dispatch. Go ahead, Unit 12. Janet's voice had that tight edge it got when things weren't sitting right. What's the nature of that incoming call? Static crackled for a few seconds. We've got a frantic woman reporting her missing daughter near the old quarry. Says the girl's been gone since this afternoon. The old quarry. I knew that spot. Deep water, steep sides, no guardrails, the kind of place that claimed a kid every few years. Janet, what number is that call coming from? Another pause. 207-666-3847. There it was. Same prefix, same pattern. Janet, listen to me. Do not answer any calls from that number range. You copy? Mark, there's a missing child. I don't care what they're saying. Do not answer it. I could hear her breathing over the radio. Probably thought I'd lost my mind. Mark, I can't just ignore a missing person call. Yes, you can. And you will. I'd answered one of those calls during my 2nd year. Woman crying about her son trapped in a well behind the Morrison place. Spent 3 hours out there in the dark, digging through brambles and calling his name. Found the old well all right, bone dry for decades, covered with a steel grate that hadn't been moved in years. But I kept hearing him. Kept hearing that kid screaming for help from somewhere I couldn't reach. Followed those screams through half the county before dawn broke and the voices stopped. Never did find any missing child. Never found any record of a call either. "Copy that, Unit 12. Janet's voice was flat now. Professional. She didn't like it, but she'd follow orders. I turned the cruiser around and headed back toward town. The station was only 10 minutes out, and I wanted to check something. The Aroostook County Sheriff's Department sat on the corner of Maine and Elm, a squat brick building that looked like it had been built to withstand a siege. Most nights the place was empty, except for whoever was pulling dispatch duty. I parked in my usual spot and killed the engine. The front door was unlocked. Always was. In a county this size, you couldn't lock people out when they needed help. I walked through the lobby, past the bulletin board covered with wanted posters and community notices. The hallway stretched ahead, fluorescent lights humming overhead. My footsteps echoed off the linoleum. That's when I noticed the clock. The big round clock on the wall above the dispatcher's desk read 8:15. I checked my watch. 9:15. I stopped walking. The station clock was always right. Janet checked it every shift. Synchronized it with the radio system. Had to, for the logs. I walked over to the clock and reached up, turning the minute hand forward. The hour hand followed, clicking into place. 9:15. The temperature dropped like someone had opened a freezer door. My breath came out in a small puff of vapor. And then I heard them. Whispers, coming from somewhere down the hall. Too faint to make out words, but definitely voices. Multiple voices, all talking at once. "Tom?" Sergeant Bradley's office door opened. He stepped out, looking like he'd aged 10 years since I'd seen him last week. His uniform was wrinkled, his face gray with exhaustion. "Mark, didn't expect to see you tonight. Had some questions about those calls, the 666 numbers." Tom nodded slowly. "Yeah, those calls." He rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand. "Come on into my office. We need to talk." I followed him inside. He closed the door behind us and gestured to the chair across from his desk. The whispers had stopped, but the air still felt cold. "Tom, what's going on? Janet's getting missing person calls from numbers that don't exist." "They exist." Tom sat down heavily in his chair. "Question is whether the people calling from them do." He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a file folder, thin, maybe a dozen pages inside. "Lisa Chen disappeared 2 nights ago." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Lisa was our newest officer, just 6 months out of the academy. Eager, smart, followed protocol to the letter. Disappeared how? Same way they all do. Tom opened the file. She was working the night shift. Dispatch logged her last radio check at 10:45 p.m. Security cameras show her walking into the evidence room at 11 p.m. He slid a photograph across the desk. Black and white security footage, timestamp in the corner. Lisa in her uniform, pushing open the evidence room door. She never came out. "What do you mean, never came out? There's only one door." "I mean, we found her badge and service weapon on the evidence room floor the next morning. Door was still locked from the inside. No other way out." I stared at the photograph. Lisa looked normal, alert. Nothing in her posture suggested anything was wrong. "Tom, that's impossible." "Is it?" He leaned back in his chair. "Same thing happened to Kevin Walsh 3 years ago. Danny Rodriguez before that. Always the night shift, always after the clock gets reset." "Reset?" "Time distortion. Happens maybe once a month. Clocks in the building fall behind by exactly 1 hour. When someone fixes them," he gestured at the file, "that's when we lose people." The whispers started again, faint but persistent, coming from the direction of the evidence room. Lisa reset the clock that night, Tom said quietly. Just like you did 5 minutes ago. My radio crackled to life before Tom could say another word. Unit 1, this is dispatch. Janet's voice came through tight and high. We've got multiple calls coming in. I grabbed the handset. Go ahead, Janet. Mark, they're all from that number range. 207-666. I've got 5 calls in the last 2 minutes. Missing persons, accidents, fires, all over the county. The whispers down the hall got louder. Not much, but enough that Tom glanced toward his office door. What kind of calls? I asked. Woman says her husband fell down a mine shaft on Copper Ridge Road. Man reporting his daughter's car went off the bridge on Route 1. House fire on Maple Street with people trapped inside. I looked at Tom. His face had gone pale. Janet, you're not dispatching units to any of those, right? No, but Mark, what if they're real? What if people actually need help? The temperature in Tom's office dropped another 10 degrees. I could see my breath when I spoke into the radio. They're not real. Follow protocol. Do not answer any more calls from that prefix. Copy that. Her voice shook. But Mark, there's something else. Sarah and James are both calling in. I switched to the main channel. Unit 3, Unit 5, this is Unit 1. Report. Sarah's voice came through first, pitched higher than usual. Mark, I'm at the north end near Route 11. There's lights moving through the trees, not flashlights. Something else. They're blue-green and they're moving in patterns. How many lights? At least a dozen, maybe more. They keep disappearing and reappearing deeper in the forest. James cut in before I could respond. Unit 1. This is Unit 5. I'm at the elementary school on the east side. We've got deer here. A lot of them. Deer? 30, maybe 40, all with those glowing eyes. They're just standing in the parking lot, not moving, not eating, just watching the building. Tom reached across his desk and turned up the volume on his own radio. The whispers in the hallway were getting loud enough that we could almost make out words. Sarah, James, listen to me, I said. Maintain your distance. Do not approach the lights or the deer. Do not exit your vehicles. Mark, Sarah said, the lights are moving toward the road, toward Route 11. And the deer are starting to move, James added. They're heading west, toward downtown. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. The supernatural elements that usually stayed separate, that followed their own patterns, were all becoming active at once, moving toward the center of town, moving toward us. All units, maintain radio contact. Report any changes immediately. Copy that, both officers responded. I clipped the radio back to my belt and looked at Tom. This isn't normal, is it? They don't usually all happen at the same time. No. He shook his head. Usually it's one thing. One call. One disappearance. Not everything at once. The wall clock above Tom's desk caught my eye. The hands were moving backward, slowly, but definitely backward. It read 9:05 now, instead of 9:15. I stood up and reached for the clock. The time's wrong again. Don't touch it. But I was already turning the hands forward, setting them back to 9:15. The moment I let go, the temperature dropped so fast I could feel ice crystals forming in my breath. The whispers down the hall became voices, clear, distinct voices calling my name. Mark. Mark Sullivan. Mark, come here. I reset the clock again, 9:20 now, to match my watch. The voices got louder. Mark, we're waiting. Mark, come to us. Tom stood up from behind his desk. You need to stop. But I couldn't. Every time the clock hands moved backward, I reached up and fixed them. And every time I did, the voices calling my name from somewhere deep in the building grew stronger. The voices were still calling my name when my personal cell phone started ringing. I pulled it from my pocket and looked at the display. The number showed 207-666-9999. My own number calling itself. That wasn't possible. I was holding my phone. It couldn't be calling me, but it kept ringing. 30 seconds of that electronic buzz while Tom stared at me and the voices from the hallway got louder. "Mark, come to us. Mark, we're waiting." Then the ringing stopped. My radio exploded. "Unit 3 to dispatch. Something's following me through the woods. It's right behind me." Sarah's voice high and panicked, not the steady professional tone I knew. "Unit 5 to any unit. The deer have surrounded my car. They're pressing against the windows." James breathing hard. "They don't have hooves anymore. They have hands. Human hands." I grabbed my radio. "Sarah, what's your location?" "I'm running. I left the car on Route 11. It was right behind me and I ran into the trees, but it's still coming." "James, stay in your vehicle." "I can't leave. They won't let me. There's dozens of them and they're looking at me through the windows with those blue eyes and their hands are flat against the glass like they're trying to get in." Tom was standing behind his desk, watching me. The voices in the hallway had stopped calling my name. Everything was quiet except for the radio chatter. "Mark." Tom's voice was steady. "Don't go out there." But I was already moving toward the door. Whatever was happening, it was coordinated. The phone calls, the lights in the woods, the deer with human hands. Something was targeting us specifically, the whole department. "Sarah, can you get back to your vehicle?" "Negative. It's between me and the car. Mark, it looks like a person, but it moves wrong." I walked through the lobby, past the bulletin board, out the front door. The cold air hit me like a wall. My cruiser was where I'd left it, engine still running. "James, are you injured?" "No, but they won't move. They're just staring. Mark, what the hell is happening?" I got in the cruiser and put it in drive. Tom was right. Protocol said don't engage with unknown phenomena. Stay safe. Call for backup. Wait for daylight. But my officers were out there. I turned left on Main Street, heading toward Route 11. The road I'd avoided for 3 years. The road where the woman in white had vanished and left tire tracks leading into the river. "Sarah, I'm en route to your location. Don't come here. Something's wrong with this whole area." I pressed the accelerator. The speedometer hit 50, then 60. Route 11 was 5 miles out. "James, try starting your engine." I did. Nothing. It's like the battery's dead, but all my electronics are working. The turnoff appeared in my headlights. Route 11. The road I'd driven past every night for 3 years without stopping. I turned right and felt the temperature drop another 10 degrees. "Mark, seriously, don't come out here." Sarah's voice was getting weaker on the radio. "I think it wants you specifically." Maybe it did. Maybe that's what the phone calls were about. The voices calling my name. The clock that kept falling behind until I fixed it. My headlights swept across the empty road. No broken down sedan. No woman in white dress. Then I saw her. Standing directly in the center of the road, maybe 50 yards ahead. White dress, long dark hair, pale skin. Exactly like 3 years ago. I didn't slow down. I'd learned that lesson. When you see something impossible, you don't stop to investigate. You drive past and pretend it didn't happen. 40 yards, 30, 20. She didn't move, didn't vanish. Just stood there watching my headlights approach. 10 yards. She raised her hand. My engine died. The cruiser rolled forward on momentum for another few feet, then stopped. Right in front of her. Close enough that I could see her face clearly through the windshield. She was smiling. I sat there staring at her through the windshield, engine dead. Nowhere to go. The woman in white stepped closer to my cruiser, her bare feet making no sound on the asphalt. That's when I saw her face clearly for the first time. My breath caught. Not from fear, from recognition. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. It was Rebecca Hayes. I'd seen her picture in the old case files, heard Tom and the older guys talk about her in hushed voices. Officer Rebecca Hayes disappeared on Route 11 15 years ago, 3 years before I even joined the force. But there she was, standing right in front of my patrol car like she'd just stepped off duty yesterday. Her uniform was pristine white now instead of the standard blue, not a wrinkle or stain on it, and her eyes, they held that same unnatural glow I'd seen in the deer, blue-green light that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside. She looked exactly like her academy photo, not a day older. Rebecca moved to my driver's side window and leaned down. I could see her face clearly now, pale and perfect, framed by long blonde hair that moved in a breeze I couldn't feel. She spoke, and somehow I heard every word through the closed window. "Hello, Mark." Her voice had a strange quality to it, melodic, like it was coming from somewhere far away and close at the same time. "You've been following the rules," she said. "That's good, but you don't understand what they're really for." I found my voice. "Rebecca? Rebecca Hayes?" She smiled. "You know me. You disappeared 15 years ago, right here on Route 11. "I didn't disappear," she said. "I joined them." "Joined who?" "The Guardians." She pressed her palm against the window. The glass didn't fog from her touch. "Mark, you need to listen carefully. Everything you think you know about what's happening here is wrong." I stared at her. "Wrong how?" "The entities you've been avoiding, the calls you won't answer, the rules you follow so carefully." Her eyes met mine through the glass. "They're not malevolent. They're protective." "Protective?" "Guardians of this county, of the people who live here." Rebecca's voice carried that haunting quality, like she was speaking from the bottom of a well. "The rules don't exist to protect you from evil forces, Mark. They exist to maintain balance." "Balance between what?" "The human world and ours." I shook my head. "That doesn't make sense. Danny disappeared. Lisa, Kevin, they're gone." "They're not gone." Rebecca's smile was sad now. "They're here, with me, with us." "Where?" "Between, watching, protecting." She moved her hand along the window. "The phone calls you won't answer. They warn of real dangers, threats that require intervention beyond human capability." I thought about the calls Janet had described. Missing persons, accidents, fires. "The woman who called about her daughter," I said, "near the quarry. Real danger, real child. We guided her to safety before you could arrive and make things worse." "Make things worse how?" "Human interference disrupts the process. Your presence would have prevented us from reaching her." Rebecca stepped back from the window. "The time distortions allow us to move freely, to address threats while your world sleeps. When someone resets the clocks, they're opening doorways for us to work. And the deer, sentries, they guide lost souls safely through the forests. Mark, how many missing person cases have you had in this county since you started working here?" I thought about it. Not many. Maybe 3 or 4 in 12 years. In a county this size with this much wilderness, you should have dozens. Hunters who get turned around, hikers who lose the trail, children who wander off. Rebecca's eyes glowed brighter. "We guide them home." "The iron knife," I said, "in my ankle holster, marks you as an ally. The iron doesn't ward off enemies, Mark. It identifies you to protective spirits. It tells them you're one of the officers who understands the balance." I sat there in my dead patrol car, staring at a woman who'd been missing for 15 years, trying to process what she was telling me. "Tom knows," I said. "Doesn't he?" "Tom has always known. He's been maintaining the balance longer than anyone." Rebecca leaned closer to the window again. The rules keep your world and ours separate when separation is needed, but sometimes the barriers must come down. Like tonight, she nodded. Your officers are in no danger, Mark. Sarah is being guided to safety. James is being protected until the threat passes. What threat? Rebecca's expression grew serious. Something that doesn't belong to either world. Something that feeds on the space between them. I looked at Rebecca through the windshield, her glowing eyes steady on mine. The weight of what she'd told me settled in my chest like cold water. Danny's alive, I said. Not a question. All of them are. Different than they were, but alive. Rebecca's voice carried through the glass like it was open air. They chose to cross over, to become something more than human, but less than spirit. And they're protecting people. Every night, every time someone gets lost in the woods or their car breaks down on a back road, every time the barriers thin and things slip through that shouldn't be here. She moved closer to the window. They guide people home. They stand between your world and the things that would hurt it. I thought about the missing person reports I'd filed over the years. 3 or 4 in 12 years, Tom had said. Should have been dozens. The offer's open to you too, Mark. I'd known it was coming. Soon as she started explaining about the others, I could feel it building. The choice. Join them. Join us. Rebecca's expression was calm, patient. You already understand the balance better than most. You follow the rules. You carry the iron. You know when to look away and when to act. What would that mean? You'd see more, understand more, be able to help in ways you can't now. She paused. But you'd also be changed. Not human anymore, not exactly. Something between. I stared at her through the windshield. Thought about Danny, always curious, always pushing boundaries. About Lisa, eager to prove herself. About Kevin, confident he could handle anything. Would I still be me? The part that matters, yes, but you'd see the world differently, feel it differently. Time would work differently for you. And if I say no, then you go back to your patrol, back to following the rules, but now you know why they matter. Now you understand what you're protecting and what's protecting you. I sat there in the dead quiet of my cruiser, engine cold, radio silent. Thought about Sarah running through the woods, James surrounded by those deer with human hands. Thought about Tom aging in that office, carrying this knowledge for God knows how long. Thought about going home to my empty apartment, making coffee in the morning, putting on the uniform, driving these same roads, but knowing, always knowing what was really out there. I can't, I said finally. I appreciate what you're offering, I do. But I need to stay human. Stay on this side. Rebecca smiled, and for the first time since she'd appeared, it looked genuinely warm. I thought you might say that. It's not a failing, Mark. Both sides need people who understand. Tom's been that bridge for 15 years. Maybe it's time he had help. She stepped back from the window and moved around to the front of the cruiser, placed both hands flat on the hood. You'll remember all of this, and when the time comes, when someone new joins the force, or when the rules need explaining, you'll know what to say. The engine roared to life under her touch. Headlights blazed on, cutting through the darkness. Radio crackled back to static, then cleared. Rebecca Hayes smiled once more and stepped backward into the night. Her white uniform caught the headlight beams for a moment. Then she was gone. Just darkness and the empty road ahead. I pulled into the station parking lot and saw both Sarah's and James's cruisers already there, engines running, headlights cutting through the darkness. Relief hit me harder than I expected. Sarah was leaning against her car, arms crossed, talking to James, who stood next to his open driver's door. Both of them looked up when my headlights swept across the lot. "You two all right?" I called out as I got out of my cruiser. Yeah, Sarah said, but her voice was shaky. Whatever was chasing me through those woods just stopped, like someone flipped a switch. One second I'm running for my life, next second I'm standing alone in the trees. James nodded. Same here. Those deer with the... He stopped, shook his head. They just walked away, all of them, like they got called off or something. I looked at both of them. They were rattled, but unhurt. Exactly like Rebecca said they'd be. Let's get inside, I said. Warm up, write our reports. The station felt different when we walked in. Warmer. The fluorescent lights hummed their usual tune instead of that electric buzz that made your teeth ache. The hallway was quiet. No whispers, no voices calling my name. I walked straight to the wall clock above Janet's desk. It read 9:05. Same as it had been doing all night, hands creeping backward like they were trying to undo time itself. Sarah and James watched as I reached up and moved the hands forward to 9:45. My watch said 9:43, close enough. The temperature stayed normal. No ice crystals in my breath, no voices from down the hall. Just the quiet tick of a clock keeping proper time. That's been acting up all night, I said, like it was nothing more than a maintenance issue. Tom's office door opened and he stepped out, looking less gray than he had an hour ago. Still tired, but not like he was carrying the weight of the world anymore. Everyone accounted for? He asked. Yes, sir, I said. Crisis is over. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. I picked up my radio and switched to the main channel. All units, this is Unit 2. Resume normal patrol patterns. Continue following established protocols for unusual calls and sightings. Remember, we're maintaining balance, not fighting a war. Sarah looked at me funny. Maintaining balance. Just means we work with what we've got, I said. Follow the rules, trust the system. It's been working for 15 years. James was already heading for the coffee pot. Long as those deer stay in the woods where they belong. They will, I said, and I meant it. I finished my shift, driving the back roads, checking the usual spots. The glowing eyes were still out there. I caught sight of them twice, standing at the tree line, watching the road. But now I understood what I was seeing. Sentries, guardians. The 8-point buck from earlier stood near the old Miller farm, same spot as always. When I slowed down, he lifted his head and looked right at me. Those blue-green eyes weren't threatening anymore. They were acknowledging, like a nod between co-workers. I drove on. My radio stayed quiet the rest of the night. No calls from the 666 prefix. No desperate voices reporting impossible emergencies. Whatever had been testing us, whatever had been pushing at the boundaries, had settled back into place. At 6 a.m, I pulled into the station lot as Tom was heading out to his truck. Good work tonight, Sullivan, he said. Don't know what you did out there, but whatever it was, it worked. I nodded. Tom didn't need to know about Rebecca, about the choice I'd made, about what I'd learned standing on that empty road. He'd carried this knowledge alone for 15 years. Now he had help, even if he didn't know it yet. Just doing my job, Sergeant. He smiled. First real smile I'd seen from him in months. See you tonight. The sun came up slow over the tree line, painting the frost orange on my windshield. I'd been driving the back roads for the last hour, making my final rounds before shift change. Everything looked different now. Same roads, same trees, same fields. But I knew what was watching from the shadows. I pulled over at the old Miller place one more time. The 8-point buck was gone, but I could feel eyes on me from deeper in the woods. Not threatening, just aware. Like they knew, I knew. 12 years I'd been following the rules without understanding them. 12 years of avoiding certain calls, staying away from Route 11, carrying that iron knife in my ankle holster. I'd thought I was protecting myself from something dangerous. Turns out I was protecting something dangerous from me. The radio crackled, Janet's voice, clear and steady. "All units, this is dispatch. Day shift is coming on duty. Night patrol. Return to station for end of watch." "Copy that," I said into the handset. "Unit 2 heading in." I turned the cruiser around and started back toward town. The morning air was crisp, clean, normal, but I knew what moved beneath the surface now. Rebecca had shown me the truth about Danny and Lisa and Kevin, about the guardians who kept our county safe, about the balance that needed maintaining. Tom would be waiting at the station. 15 years he'd carried this knowledge alone. Now he had help, even if he didn't know it yet. I'd figure out how to tell him, how to let him know he wasn't the only one anymore. The radio stayed quiet as I drove through downtown. No emergency calls from impossible numbers. No desperate voices reporting things that couldn't be real. Whatever had been testing the boundaries last night had settled back into place. I thought about the choice Rebecca had offered, to cross over, to become something between human and spirit. Part of me wondered what that would have been like, to see the world the way Danny saw it now, to understand everything instead of just enough. But someone had to stay on this side. Someone had to be the bridge. I reached down and touched the iron knife through my pants leg. Still there, still solid. But it meant something different now. Not protection from enemies, alliance with friends. The station came into view, a few cars in the lot already. Day shift getting ready to take over. I pulled into my usual spot and turned off the engine. My watch read 6:37. Normal time, normal morning. Normal end to what should have been a normal patrol. Except nothing would be normal again. I knew too much now, saw too much, understood what the rules were really for. I got out of the cruiser and locked it, walked toward the station door. Inside, I could hear voices. Day shift officers getting briefed, coffee brewing, radio chatter, all of it real, all of it human. But I knew what else was out there. What watched from the tree line, what moved in the spaces between worlds, what kept us safe from things that didn't belong to either side. I adjusted my radio one last time and headed for the door. Time to go home. Time to get some sleep. Time to prepare for tonight, when I'd come back and do it all again. Different now, forever changed. But still here, still human. Still part of the balance that kept Aroostook County safe from whatever waited beyond our borders.